Hello, everybody. My name is Trevor Boucher. I'm one of the webinar team leads here for the NWA, along with Melissa Sizemore and Becca Mazer. But you'll be hearing from myself today and from John Banghoff, who's one of our guests here. So you're probably wondering, what's this all about? You heard about the showcases. Now you're probably expecting when you get your abstract submissions to you that or your disposition sent, you're getting the traditional oral or you're getting a poster. Some of you got the oral notifications and some of you did not get a poster. You got a showcase, which is not what we're used to hearing about. So this webinar is kind of intended for us to kind of explain what that is, why we're changing the name of virtual posters, and a little bit of the context of what we're hoping to achieve with the upcoming annual meeting and trying to do things a little bit more geared towards the hybrid space. So before we get into the details right off the bat, I did want to introduce John Banghoff, a meteorologist at the State College office, I believe, and at the National Weather Service. And he and I have been working together on really spearheading this concept of reimagining virtual posters in the hybrid space. I think it's probably no secret that they haven't exactly felt right in the last 2 years as far as how do they feel, how do they look, how do they operate within an app. What is that? What are the pros and cons associated with that? And before we kind of go into why we made decisions, John, I'm just kind of curious from your standpoint, what's your experience been like over the last couple of years, just in any conference doing posters?
Yeah. So, like many of you, it's been kind of weird, right? Navigating this hybrid space or this fully virtual space. I know I was in person last year in Tulsa for NWA, and it was interesting doing this poster, right? Because you have both the virtual attendees, which is great, but I found myself in person, kind of sitting at a table with headphones in, looking at my computer, and it wasn't very engaging. And so it's been really fun over the course of the past several months to work with you and others at NWA to kind of brainstorm how can we make this better. And we sort of figured out, okay, posters is it kind of has a stigma associated with it, right? You're picturing your 4 foot by 3 foot piece of paper up on a bulletin board. It works, but after you take it down, that's all there is to it, right? You curl it up in the poster tube, and nobody else really sees it again. So how can we make this a little bit more friendly in the digital age? And then what are we going to call this thing? Now, you and I, Trevor, had many conversations of uh, what are we going to do with it? There were some sort of off the wall crazy ideas, and we sort of settled collectively on the showcase, just because, man, it gives us an opportunity to, well, showcase our work. And we really think that it encapsulates sort of a breadth of different media that can be used to be able to execute this. And we hope that this webinar today is going to give you some glimpse into that. I'll say there's still some details that we're not totally sure on the logistics of how it's going to work to do a hybrid showcase. We're not totally keen on that. We're going to be working through that through the course of the summer. But at the end of the day, we really want this to be a place where people can use their creativity, leverage technology, and be able to showcase ideas really effectively to facilitate better discussions. And so I'm really, really excited about it, Trevor. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so when we got into our discussion about why we're doing this, really, it came down to why do we have posters altogether? And you and I talked about that really in depth. It was like, why in person do we have posters? And I think one of the things we came to was that that's a construct of being in person and resource allocation. You got to be put a bunch of people in one room. And how can you give everyone the equal space in order to have that, 50, 60, in some conferences, it's hundreds of people that are in this main room. And so it's everybody trying to kind of compete for audience attention. They all have the same general format with that. And so it's this very trafficy flow where you kind of come in and come out. You're window shopping, that's what I usually call it, of what titles do I want. And we've even gone through some iterations with how to design your poster so it's a little bit more enticing from a scan view, what situation that you're in. But that part of it doesn't really make sense, I think, in the like virtual world, because you're not walking through a main room. You're going through an app. You're going through a page, and so it's just a listing of titles. And so really all you have to use, especially in the app that we're using, is this listing. Now we're hoping to make some changes on that too, so that you can maybe potentially see a thumbnail or things of that sort. But in the end, just like you had mentioned, John, like the whole point was we feel like they're not really posters. And it's just a
Right.
bad name for them really altogether, right? So the whole concept of showcase, we could have called it anything, but is we want everyone to know that you can showcase the work that you're doing. And that doesn't mean that there's limitations on that. There may be some limitations to the format on the app, but you have the freedom to create your space to do whatever presentation that you want. And I think that's really an amazing type of thing to go into a conference doing, is that now I have an hour. What am I going to do with that hour now that I've got my space and you've come into my location in my showcase area? Now what am I doing with that? Does it have to be just one stagnant thing? Well, why would it? We're in a virtual space. Can't we leverage the whole internet to do that?
Yeah, Trevor, and I think there's some very clear benefits, again, which we'll talk about. But one of the main ones that I think about, we're meteorologists, right? We like radar imagery. And in the past, if you wanted to put up radar, it had to be a steady image. In this virtual or sort of this hybrid space now, you can embed a GIF of a radar loop on your poster, right? Your traditional 4-foot by 3-foot document. So people can actually see radar loops. They can see videos. There's a lot of capabilities there. There's QR codes. There's hyperlinks. There's all sorts of different stuff, which we'll talk about. And so what we want to encourage you to do is you're kind of thinking about, or maybe already have designed your content for this coming annual meeting. I know I haven't even really thought much about it yet, but as you do so, I want to just give you some ideas to sort of chew on and figure out, man, how can I be creative? We understand that there's going to be a wide variety, right, of exploration and creativity. We've got the whole spectrum today to show you a couple of different examples, but our hope is that for each individual person, right, there's going to be a little bit more ability to be creative, to add in some additional flair. And as we have this team to come together to talk about showcases, one of our goals was, man, we just hope that more people will get more creative, right? Like, not a lot of organizations or associations have done this type of thing yet. And so we think from an NWA standpoint as well, there's a great opportunity to kind of push things ahead and innovate, and we value your feedback in this. But again, the point of today and over the course of the summer is going to be just to explore, see how you can get creative. We want to try a whole bunch of stuff. I like to say, throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. And I know, Trevor, I'm really, really excited about seeing what everybody comes up with over the next few months.
Me too. That brings us to what we're here for. We have a team of folks, not just the two of us, that have either already been doing this. We're leaning forward really in the last 2 years that we've done these conferences and done some really kind of out of the box thinking and did presentations. They had a Google Meet or they had something along those lines, and then they just explored what they could do. That could be as significant as creating a 30-minute long video, for instance, or that could be somebody that generated something that was very well produced, and you may not have those resources, but if you do, why not use them? Use them to your benefit. So we're going to have a few different folks that are on this today that are going to show you some examples of what they did, and in some cases what they will be doing. Like, this is how they would design it now that they know what we're doing here. So I'm really looking forward to that, and for the case of this call, but then also our plan for the rest of the summer. John already mentioned another thing we're going to be tackling is what does that look like when you're actually in person, and how do you interface with the virtual participants that are there. But also, we are hoping to also have a sort of how-to, I guess it is. We're going to have another session down the summer when we actually get into building our presentations, and we'd like the team to be able to be there to brainstorm with you. So if you're having some trouble with what's a good way to do this, we're actually going to think about doing a workshop where how do you create a showcase. So everybody that's on the team will hopefully be available to do that, maybe even some more folks that have done some examples. And it's just kind of a think tank of how can I start my presentation, which is probably something we could have done in several other years anyways, just how to create a poster. But we're hoping to kind of do that to kind of kickstart year one of doing a showcase as well. So that's the timeline for us to be able to work together as a team. So hopefully that sort of lays the groundwork. And one last little detail before we start getting to our examples. The emails that went out, they should have had a one-pager in them that kind of lays out what this is in a real simple way. It's my understanding that they didn't necessarily get attached to that email when they gave it out to you, but you should have a follow-up email that has that one-pager information at this point. So if you didn't see it before, keep an eye out for that. And if you don't have the one-pager, just let Janice know, and she'll get that sent out to you if you didn't already receive it. So am I forgetting anything, John, before we jump into the examples?
I don't think so. I think that's everything. And I guess it's a good time now. We're going to start sort of just with like a baseline enhancement, right? So Trevor's getting himself set up right now. This is something that Trevor's been really innovative in, is changing the way that we do posters, right? Making them less word heavy and more interactive and engaging. So Trevor's going to start us out with sort of a baseline example of how you can add hyperlinks and QR codes and things to be able to just make your poster, your showcase, a little more interactive and engaging. Then we'll go on through from there. But Trevor, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Sure. Okay, so you can see my screen, John. Everything's fine. Just want to double check.
Not yet, I don't think. It says waiting to view your screen.
Okay, well, let me make sure that I can do that. See, the audience view shows my slide, so hopefully you guys can all see it. Okay, Eric says he can see it. Perfect.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Something for you to figure out real quick, John. But anyway, so this is an example of one of my posters that I did back in 2020. So this was 2 years ago, in the first year that we did this. And so um, as you can see, this poster is very similar in like format than we would have had in a traditional poster. It's basically that 4x3 or whatever the dimensions are for a poster, and it has just a simple information. And this is essentially what I would have created if we were in person and just had this printed out and put on the board. But there's some little differences you can see right off the bat is I utilized a QR code. Now I could have done that with a stagnant poster anyway, but one little detail that's different if you see how I've written this here is it says scan the QR code for an interactive e-poster for your phone. So it occurred to me that during our presentation that this would be what you would have seen if you were in the app, but it isn't the only thing that you can see in our presentation, even when we called them posters. That we had the freedom to create a Google Meet or a Zoom or something along those lines, and you use that platform. Once you're in it, then it's kind of whatever I wanted to do. So I thought about how could I do that? What are some simple things I could do to change things? So in addition to being able to scan this QR code, I can also click on it. And if I clicked on it, it actually takes you to the Google Meet that I was hosting. So you can see right there, it doesn't work anymore, obviously, because this was 2 years ago. But you could go there at that time, click on that, and that's where I would be. So even if you weren't finding me in the app, you were able to see that you go to this. That's the time I'm supposed to be there, and then I click on that, and there I am. Be ready to answer your questions. And so when you got there, there was another thing like, okay, well, is this all I'm using as my backdrop, and that's it? So I took it a step further and expanded this so that when you actually arrived, you saw something a little bit extended, much like you would do an extended abstract. So here, this is what you would end up seeing. So if you had scanned the QR code on your phone, you would have seen this. This is just a Google slide set that is in presentation mode, and you publish it in presentation mode. So if somebody scans a QR code, they get that URL, and on their phone, they'll literally get this full screen presentation looking exactly like you have it. So it's essentially, as you see, the left 2/3 of that are my exact poster. And then I added some buttons that are over here. And again, this is just a slide set. Anybody can do this in Google Slides or in a PowerPoint. And if you clicked on any of these buttons, it takes you to a reference point, right? And then you could simply touch screen, essentially. You had a poor version of an app on your phone that you could have walked through the guidance yourself. And in this particular case, I was trying to showcase a partnership with CCSD. So there was an example, you can click on that and it took you right to that document that I was referencing. So if you really wanted to look at that, you had that right in front of you and had it on your phone if you wanted to download it too. So if you ever want to explore something, just simple additions to what would have otherwise been the traditional poster in the virtual space, now you have a lot more access to stuff. You can link to YouTube. You can link to these Google documents that you might have been working with a partner on, other guidance, whatever it is that you want to do. Is there some place that this lives on the internet that you can reference? And that's something you can't do in an in-person poster unless you like brought your own tablet or something along those lines. Some people have done that, have little side tables. But this to me was the virtual version of a side table. Now that you got there, here is your extra material that you can use and actually do something. If I was sitting on the other end of a PC, I wanted to kind of look at my phone and see the same thing you're seeing. I know they can't click on it if they're in a Google Meet, so I wanted to have a way that they can interact with it themselves, and this was kind of an elegant way to do that. So, so this was just an example. I had another one, but for the sake of time, I won't go into it. It's essentially the same functionality.
No,
But
no, Trevor, could you just speak real quick to how you kind of link everything? I mean, I think it's relatively straightforward. It's just like
mhm.
click on something and hyperlink, right? But just in
Yeah,
terms of the topology to do that.
it's probably a good example to just kind of like see, okay, here's my actual working document and everything in
Yep.
it is something that I can, it's just an object, right? So for the sake of the QR code, it's itself a button. And so in this case, I just did a copy and paste of my actual stagnant poster. So this part wasn't actually clickable there because you're already in the actual poster. But these buttons here, they're just simple shapes that have an image in it. They were grouped together, and then any object that is in your presentation can be hyperlinked here. So just insert a link, and then that, if you click on that object, it will take you to some other external place. Now, if you were to wanting to reference something in your presentation, see, I have actually two other slides here. One is kind of a walkthrough of what we did here, and so that was this button here. So all you had to do here is, instead of referencing it to an external URL, you can point that to a place in your presentation. See down at the bottom, it says slides in this presentation, and I can link it to one of those places. So in order for it to have the look and feel like I wanted it to, I needed to make sure that any object that that would look like a button, and then when you touch it, it would serve as a button. So these two things are hidden. So all you see on your phone is this title slide until you ask it to link to that slide. So the end result of this ends up becoming this. This is what you would see on your phone or on your computer if you were to download it. And then you click on the button, let's say that other slide, and it takes you right to that slide. The reference is to that slide. And then obviously little things that you would need to do is like, hey, I need to go back to my title slide. So this object literally links to the title slide. And then there you are. So you essentially have, like I said, a poor man's version of my poster now being like an interactive app in a way. Like it takes you to the simple places to reference.
And it seems cool, Trevor, that you could even link to, web pages or YouTube videos or things like that. So it's really dynamic and interactive. And so we really think that this is sort of the baseline way to just add a little bit more interactivity. We think there's a ton of benefit to this. One other maybe simpler thing that you could even do. I know sometimes the most difficult part is taking a 4 foot by 3 foot piece of paper and trying to organize it. You could just do like 5 PowerPoint slides as well and speak to those and make those interactive and dynamic. So there's that spectrum of things that can be done as well, just sort of on the baseline, basic level. That's what I've done in the past, is just 5 PowerPoint slides that have some hyperlinks to them, and you can go to web pages and things. So that's pretty neat. Well, Trevor, what do you say we go ahead and bring in our next panelist? If you'll go ahead and let you introduce her.
Absolutely. So we'll give her an opportunity to turn her camera on, but we're introducing now Melissa Sizemore. Melissa's on our board of directors, actually, the first year board director this year, also a member of the webinar team. And we wanted to actually invite her onto this because she has a very unique perspective of looking at posters altogether. And so let me make you the presenter real quick here, Melissa, so you can show everybody and take it from here.
Perfect. Thank you, Trevor.
Sorry, I'm slow. Here we go.
Okay. Let me see here.
So as you're kind of spinning that up, Melissa, I'm just kind of curious, how long have you been going to annual meetings and being a part of the process of going to conferences?
My first annual meeting was the meeting in Huntsville. So that was 2019. I had been to a few AMS conferences when I was a student, but I went directly into the workforce afterwards, and I'm an emergency manager. So cost to be able to travel to conferences isn't necessarily something that we were always had the privilege to have, really. And I started submitting abstracts when I finally had the funding to attend conferences and become more active in the association. And in 2020, I actually got an abstract, a disposition to where I could do a poster. And I'd never done a poster before in my entire life, never done an academic poster. And I was trying to think of an out of the box approach to really be able to present my information where people didn't have to look at a little box on a screen with a bunch of text. And I had originally went ahead and did a story map, but I'm actually going to present something a little bit different today on that same exact presentation for something that is available to everybody. So what you're looking at right now is actually what my poster was on the Whova app. This is what what it looked like. It was almost more of an advertisement more than anything. And it pushed people to go to an external link that now goes to more of like a scrapbook type presentation that I did on my my topic. And what's really cool about this is it allows for a little bit more creative freedom in terms of maybe what you want to present. It allows you to hyperlink videos, which are really cool. And so I went through that process, converted it over. It allows you to embed tweets and photos and YouTube videos. I found it, Canva's a really awesome tool. I use it at work all the time for making social media graphics and presentations. All of my oral presentations that I've made through conferences have been through Canva. And what's unique about Canva is all of these little graphics and text and everything else, you don't have to design yourself. It's things that are already created that you can click on. You can edit the colors and kind of go with your own color scheme to go with your theme or whatever vibe you're wanting to come off as. And so I kind of went with like this scrapbooking kind of like creative theme, just because I like to be off the wall and don't like to be a traditional person in terms of things, and presented photos and just kind of took a different approach. But you can make it as detailed or as simple as possible. And what's unique about Canva is you can also edit the size. So even if you wanted to do a traditional academic poster, so to speak, but you wanted something larger and maybe a little bit more color and a little bit more creative, Canva is a great tool to be able to use that. So any questions?
Yeah, actually, you said a bunch of things that I didn't really ever think about. I'm familiar with Canva. I like it. Use it for making graphics on social media and stuff, but I never considered creating a PowerPoint-like presentation, a slide set using it. So can you show us like how you do that in Canva?
Yeah.
Like what those options are?
Yep, let me see here. So this is what it looks like in Canva when you're making it. You can make your own size of what you want, or you can do a standard PowerPoint slide deck with the standard, I think it's like 16 by 9, and you can choose different templates, or you can develop your own. So I uploaded a radar image and pinned it to the back, and then took a basic square graphic, overlaid it on top of it, pinned it, made it more opaque or translucent so people could see through it. So you have a little bit of a creative background, but it's not taking away from what you're looking at on the specific presentation. What's really cool about Canva is that you have a ton of different ways and different things that you can utilize for text. You can edit the text. You can make it as plain or as bold as possible. You can search for different types of graphics that you can put in there to kind of, I kind of like clip art, but a lot better than clip art, essentially, that you can add some extra creative detail to your poster. You have the ability of, if you wanted to create charts, you can put charts in there. You can upload photos, all kinds of stuff that's been on there. You can upload other photos, personal photos to stick in there. Really, you have a lot of really cool things and integrations in Canva that can be able to be shared across platform, especially if you're talking about different types of presentations that you've done in the past and you're using examples of maybe things across social media, or you're embedding videos. It's as simple as selecting video. You can put one that you uploaded, or you can embed one with a link, and it literally just drops on there. You can fix it to the physical presentation, and allows for an additional element of interaction when presenting, which is really cool.
So the slide you started off with, can you go back to that? The one that you said that you put in the actual app. Did you make that in Canva?
I did.
This was a stagnant. Basically the, I keep saying window dressing, but this is essentially your advertisement for your
Yep.
Session, and then you had a much more expanded thing, all done through Canva. So
yep.
my first question is, that seems pretty robust for being free for everyone. Is that true?
So there's a paid version of Canva and a free version of Canva. The paid version, you get more detailed like clip art that you can put in there, but the actual free version of Canva is pretty robust, and it allows you to do a lot. It has a lot of functionality that you could utilize. And for this one, I believe when I created this one, I actually used the free version. I was just dabbling in Canva myself back in 2020, and most of the stuff that, like the photos and the backgrounds and stuff, are stuff that I personally uploaded and put in there, and everything else is just like square and rectangle elements and different colored text. It takes a little bit of practice, but for me, from what I can take away, it doesn't take any longer than what you would do for maybe in like a Google slide or a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like almost easier than going through some of the other traditional platforms for creating something like this. John, have you ever used this before to do anything like this?
I've dabbled a little bit in it, but not a whole lot. Actually, one of the things that I'm curious about, I mean, it seems like if you can get all those graphics and icons and things from Canva, I'm assuming all the copyright stuff's like taken care of, so you don't have to worry about going and searching Google. That's usually what I'll do if I'm creating a graphic and then I'm worried about, like the copyright police coming and getting me. But it seems like through Canva, that's really nifty to get some clip art and some icons and things that enhance your presentation without having to worry about stealing somebody else's stuff. Is that true?
Yes, so any photos that you're pulling directly from Canva, so you're searching and something pops up, a lot of that is pulled from a lot of those free websites that you're going to pull those stock photos from in the first place. Unless it's photos that you've uploaded and you own yourself that you can plug in there, or any other freely available information like what we pull from on a daily basis.
So it's probably worth mentioning that this is just one example of an alternative to something like PowerPoint or Google Slides or something along those lines. And we don't even know all of the different options and resources that are there. This is just an example that Melissa used to its fullest. I had some experience with it doing social media related things. And so it might be something that's common to you, but there's several. But one of the things is that if you have the resources to get a paid version of anything, and it would help benefit you, that's kind of what we're trying to convey here, is that you have at your disposal to do what it is that you want. So I know that a lot of times when you're posting, creating a poster, there might be details about the actual paper poster that are cost more, like making it glossy or anything along those lines. So it's up to you to decide, what you want to invest in to make your presentation look and snappy or whatever that happens to be. Same thing with this, is that if you have the means and you would like to invest in some of these other resources that you can, then you're free to do so. And we'll just provide you the guidance of what actually goes on the app. So as far as I believe in Canva, you can actually export as a PDF or a JPEG or a GIF or anything along those lines. So there's multiple options in the event that the app only allows certain formats to be in there, the Canva app. But we're really not expecting wild changes with the app. It more or less will function the same way, but you would have something that would go into the app, and then you're free to create this in your other space that you have. So, John, can you think of anything else you want to ask Melissa before we move to our next example?
I don't really think so. I've been trying to rack my brain here, but Melissa, that was fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing with us. It's cool that you didn't even know, you didn't have a paradigm for a poster, and this was sort of the first thing that you explored. One other thing you did know was a story map. So I think at this point, we'll probably go into transition to our next presenter. Melissa, thank you so much. Next presenter, going to give him some time to get on, is Jared Allen. Jared Allen's the warning coordination meteorologist out at the Cheyenne, Wyoming National Weather Service office, and he is a GIS guru, I would say, across the weather sector, the weather service, certainly, and certainly excited to hear what he has to say. So, Jared, as you're kind of getting things spun up and sharing your screen, really excited to just sort of explore this whole realm. I think at first you're going to kind of walk us through maybe how you transition from an existing poster type format to story map and then expand beyond that. Why don't you just go ahead and take it away?
Awesome. Thanks, John. Thanks, Trevor. First, I'll kind of show an example from Brandon Black down there in the Mobile Weather Service office, where he had this traditional poster that you see up on your screen right there. He did have a QR code. You've seen a couple examples from Trevor, from John, from Melissa earlier. So you do embed the QR code component. And then he also even has a web page that you could potentially link to make it slightly more interactive that way. But this is kind of one of the pre-COVID or pre-pandemic type of poster settings versus the showcase that we're kind of moving towards. So in this particular case, he's talking about Hurricane Sally, from forecast challenges, synoptic influences. He's got a couple images in there. But kind of like John mentioned at the very beginning, if you're more in a virtual environment or want to make it a bit more interactive, heck, we can do looping satellite. We can do looping radar. So what Brandon ended up doing is making an experience ArcGIS online web page. So you can actually already see it's right off the bat quite a bit more engaging than maybe your traditional poster can be, because you get that looping radar. You see Sally coming in, making landfall there just to the east of Mobile. And then you can just easily scroll down. You can see basically a table of contents components right here, a large map that he made that can be interactive in and of itself. So you can actually then zoom in further here by using some of these components to see what all was significantly impacted based off of Hurricane Sally in and around the Mobile CWA down there. And then you can see interactively, again, these are like the same images that were on a poster, but in a much more interactive session, say on your phone, or if you wanted to look at it, after the fact and re-explore it. It's like, oh, I looked at that poster, but I don't really remember what it was saying unless, you took a picture. But if you have that QR code and then you have this web page URL, then you can visit it basically anytime and then probably reach back to Brandon if you have any questions about anything. So they've got a time frame of the different products that were out, highlighting the forecast challenges here that is much more interactive as well. And then if you just kind of keep scrolling, you then see the synoptic influences, essentially the same material that's on the poster paper version, but you're showcasing it in a much different, more interactive way. And then if you just kind of keep rolling down, you see all these other components that he has in there, what they learned, and then certainly being able to reach back to him if you have any additional questions. So this is one way. Additionally, if you have ArcGIS or online platforms available to you, either through the Weather Service or sometimes emergency management have it as well. This could be in a good experience webpage to be able to build out an interactive version of what used to be posters to more of a showcase of what's going on.
You actually bring up a point before you continue further, Jared, that I wanted to revisit, is that this particular interface, creating a story map, does two things about it. One is that is this available to like any National Weather Service employee? Do we have access to be able to do this?
Yes, so every single Weather Service employee, whether Weather Service or NOAA, so say if we even get some outside Weather Service people, but you're in NOAA, everyone has personal access to the NOAA Geo platform. That's actually linked right here. I'm signed into our office account, but everyone does have an individual account as well through your CAC card credentials.
So that's a really important note. We just got a comment also that like Canva, for instance, is not something that might be approved in your region or even in the Weather Service altogether. Not everything that we're suggesting will be, but this is one of those that might be, or it is, sounds like. So we would all have access to be able to make it there. So that part's important. And the other thing too is that I think what you're illustrating here is that we didn't even mention this before, we probably should have, is that you might not be available for the session time. Something might come up, you're at home, if we're doing the presentation from home, who knows what might come up. And if you're not able to be there, this is still pretty engaging as an option for if I can't be there to comment myself. This allows the end user to kind of go through a story without you having to tell it verbally, and that's something that the poster doesn't always translate to doing. There's a lot of graphs on there. You're not really sure how to flow from one place to another, but this is very intuitive on like, here's this, and then here's the next step, and then here's that. You almost don't need the presenter. And if you, in a pinch, you have a presentation that's really friendly for the reader to walk through it themselves.
Yeah, Trevor, exactly. I was just going to say, this seems like kind of an introvert's paradise, right? With the poster session, it's like overload. You have to go up. You're kind of like awkwardly standing back trying to figure out. When you go into the hybrid medium, now you're having to like actually step into a Google Meet room or like go up and talk to somebody. Something like a story map seems really great, so I can read, I can follow along, I can, I don't have to engage with an individual to be able to do that. So it just seems like a really neat way to display the information, a little more engaging, as you said, without having to actually communicate or sort of extrovert my way into a conversation with somebody.
Sure. Yeah. I was just going to add, like, a presentation, it's a story. A poster usually is a story, but the way that you can really bring people along on your story, along that journey in this format, can be much more inviting, a lot more easier to understand and comprehend, and then be able to reach back to the individual or individuals that put it together versus, you have to be right then and there at the moment at the poster to interact. But this way allows for a lot more future interaction for sure, and plus more resources that might be available.
And it's getting my wheels turning too. So one of the things from this is that you aren't limited to just doing a poster or even telling a story in these ways. Like you could use this to demonstrate like something that you might have in some external place, or um, you could even probably do a short course if you wanted, like a one-on-one with people that, hey, we have this in development, we're looking for feedback on it. And as I understand it, you actually have an example of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the past, I'll pop this up really quick. This was a previous poster that I had used and done at an NWA conference. And, to try and make it more interactive, I put the little Google Meet link in there so we can, connect that way as well. And you have this overall GIS space, or this story that kind of flows from these different screenshots, or DSS messaging, decision support service messaging, and what can, the highlights of, say, an application. But if you're able to actually, demo this live, whether, it's a presentation or a showcase, maybe why not even do that? So instead of this interactive component through maybe a Google Meet, which, does help, you can actually then just demo your actual product, like you have right here. So in this particular case, we had a really big wildfire a few years ago in 2020. And then how do we, internally and then externally understand the hazards across that now burn scar for post-fire hydrologic impacts for debris flows and or flash flooding. And then so you can link in a lot of different layers that exist out there. You can create your own layers internally, with you and your GIS team if you have one available. And then, in this particular case, you can then demo it at a conference. So whether it's an actual presentation, showcase, however you want to play it, you can actually demo your tool if it's in ArcGIS, if it's in a different platform for emergency managers or for broadcast media or the entire weather enterprise. Then you're able to actually get almost real-time feedback too about, oh, does it do this? It's like, oh, I don't know if it can do that. Or does it do this? It's like, yeah, it does this, and let me show you how it does that. So in that particular case, you can actually do a live demo of a particular tool, whether it's in this format, if you're like NSSL and you got a different format, or if you're at some other location within NOAA or the Weather Service and you're using a different GIS platform or tool set, whatever it is built on, interactively you can show it. In this case, it's just AGOL, but you might have some other platform that you want to share. And this virtual hybrid component allows for that. So you can show your tool, get almost near instantaneous feedback, and maybe later that night you're doing something new to it because of the cool interaction that you had with somebody. Or somebody else gave you a really good idea for something else, and that's what conferences are all about. So here's one way that you can show that interactive ability with a particular tool versus just a normal, poster, so to speak.
So I imagine there's some caveats with, the more that we expand into doing things a little bit differently, there might be some things to consider. And I think when we were talking about doing this is like one specific weather service caveat with this is that it might be like public facing. If you wanted to give the user an ability to see this, there might be an approval process, or there might be some checks. Can you elaborate a little bit further about what some of those caveats might be in the weather service?
Sure. Yeah, so within the weather service, anyone can create any type of content on their own, no matter what. The issue from there is if you want to show this at a conference, you can show it, within your own account. That's not a problem. But if you are expecting other people to access it outside of you and your account, then you'll need to go through a couple steps just to get it fully public and approved. So each weather service region has a administrative individual for ArcGIS Online, and you can just go through them and or submit just an easy Esri ticket through the GIS platform that they have, and then request for an approval. And then you can go through those steps too. So probably, and I would start that process at least a few weeks before the conference too, if you plan on making it public, just so those administrators can take a look, see what it's all about, and then go ahead and approve it for showing at the conference.
Yeah, that was one of the things you just mentioned. It is that the more that you become creative and expansive and using all these tools, probably the earlier you should start testing to make sure that it's going to work. and that the access is there, it works as you intend. I ran into that with one of my QR codes. It like expired. I didn't even know it could expire with the service that I was using, and then I had to make a correction on the fly literally the day of my presentation because I didn't know that. So it was, little things like that. So this is an example of make sure you do your homework, make sure you know what the capability is of what you're going to be using, and that all the caveats associated with that. And we're not intending on this call to go through each and every caveat to remember, but as you're starting to think of like, oh, I could use this, I have that resource, this would be great. Can you do that? How would that look in that space? Is it accessible? Can it be? Should it be? All of those questions. John, you have anything for Jared?
I've been trying to rack my brain as well. I was going to bring up the sharing permissions thing. I guess one thing to add, if you guys have questions about any of this stuff, please do reach out either to Trevor and myself individually. In that email that went out, they had the flyer attached, the showcase overview and FAQ document. There's an email there, annual meeting at nwas.org. Feel free to use that as well. We want it to be engaging and interactive. There's other platforms that we haven't covered today that you think, could I use that? Can I not? Let us know if you have other thoughts or ideas or questions. We can also be advocates, and we can work with the folks at the Weather Service across the board to try to work out some of those permission things as well. So yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of other value I can add other than just saying, Trevor or Jared, thanks a lot, man. I think this whole GIS realm was cool. I've learned more about it in the past year or so, and I think there's a lot of really, really neat stuff that can be done. So encourage you guys as well who are attending and listening to explore that. See if there's utility, and I've done a couple story maps, and I think they're a really, really neat way to display information.
Yeah, and I'll add really quick, it doesn't have to be GIS or spatial related. With Brandon's example, we're looking at Hurricane Sally. It's just a nice interactive way to look at essentially a nice web page with looping and GIFs and stuff. So it doesn't even have to be GIS or geospatial. It's just another way to present the information.
Yeah, and I believe when we were doing our practice run with doing this, I believe Brandon even said that it didn't take him but a day to put all of that together to convert it from a poster to that. So I believe, I haven't done it myself, but I believe the user interface is pretty user friendly and intuitive to generate something along those lines.
And I think the Weather Service also now has some templates that you can just start with. I'm pretty sure that that's the case. I might be wrong about that, but there's probably even templates out there where you're not just having to start from scratch, but there'll be some guides that can assist you and help you out, and that might make it a little bit more straightforward.
Yeah, so thank you, Jared, and also Brandon, if you're listening, thank you for showing your showcase as well and your adaptation, because I think even though I've seen these, like it's still making my wheels turn as far as like I found out I have a showcase, so I'm also thinking, oh, I could use that. This would be helpful there too. But we do have yet another example. And so thank you, Jared. Let's actually get our next presenter, an exemplar up here, Mr. Pat Highland. I'm a big fan of Pat's, just on the way that he actually creates his titles for his presentations, whether it's an oral or a poster. I'm always looking forward to the creative titles that he puts up there, and he's going to show you an example of those here as well. But anyway, Pat, tell us a little bit about how you've approached posters in the last couple years, and some of your thoughts as well.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on the panel here to talk about some of my experiences and looking through some of these different ways to reimagine this. So one of the things was when I came to putting all this stuff together, I spent about 5 years working in public relations and marketing prior to going back into the research world. So I had to do a lot of content development for stuff. And, when I was approached with having to do a poster in the virtual realm, I still kind of wanted to have that presentation with it, just to, be able to have like a conversation with people, make it a little bit more interactive than what it could. And so this was a way for me to, put something together that had a lot of different details with it to highlight some of the cool stuff that we're doing. When people ask you the question, would you rather look at a poster or would you rather watch a movie? And so I was like, well, let's put together a movie. And in this way, you can showcase the things that are going on with your research. You can splice in different elements, make it more interactive and conversational. And then you can use that, traditional poster session time to kind of have a conversation, kind of like what you'd have a conversation after watching an actual movie, like talking about the different elements of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show this in the background here. Another nice thing about putting these videos together is it's really good for accessibility too. So when you put these together, you can have it narrated with captions, and so people are able to look through and go through these presentations with relative ease. So I put this presentation together. I did it for the NWA conference back in 2020. I also did it for the AMS conference in 2021. But I used free software that was available. I'm a Mac user, so I used iMovie. There are lots of different platforms that you can use to create these interactive videos. So one of the ways that you can do that, Microsoft and Windows have free video capabilities you can use. If your organization has other software like access to the Adobe Creative Cloud, you can use things like Adobe Premiere, Premiere Pro, so you can really put together some of these nice video packages. But it's a good way to have that conversation, to feel like you're still giving a presentation, even though you may have been given, the poster or the traditional poster designation for a conference. And the nice thing about this too is you can, what I've done here is I've actually posted it to YouTube. So if you want to share the link with other people, you can do that. I actually just shared that with the panelists and the organizers, so you can actually see that. So you can click on the link, you can share that with everybody. I have this one as unlisted, so only the people that can access that through the link have access to it, but you could make it public if you wanted to. If you're a real influencer and you want to do something like that, you could get that out. So it's a really good way to be able to package something, and you can keep this for a long time. It also makes you feel like you're giving that full presentation at a conference without having to do that. What I also did is for social media, there's certain video limits. So obviously you can't put like a 5 to 10 minute video on Twitter and Instagram, other things. So I also created a teaser that would fit within Twitter, and I had some music playing in the background. So for this case, I had Vanilla Ice playing in the background, with showing different graphics from this presentation in there, and that way I fit it into a nice package that was 2 minutes and 20 seconds long. You could post that in a tweet, and kind of people give them an indication of what they're going to see for the particular session that I'll be providing at that time. And the other thing that I did was I really like to put in pop and cultural references, make it something that's really memorable. It's really going to stick with people. So for this case, I went with the Vanilla Ice route. Right now I'm working with the Hazard Services Threats in Motion experiment, which is, Tim. So we have Tiny Tim and Taller Tim. So, I mean, that speaks for itself, and the references you could do for that. So being able to tie these things in and make it memorable is really going to get people's attention. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to go on this video route. So this would be great, if you are a broadcaster and you have this particular poster session and you want to share this, you've got the video making capabilities there. This would be a great way to do that. If you want to get a little bit more on the creative side and create a movie like this to have that presentation type feel, even though you might have this particular showcase, I think this is a great route to go to explore some of that stuff.
So I love having Pat show his examples. I also have to admit that I thought that I was leaning forward, and then Pat does this. I'm like, oh man, I never thought to put Vanilla Ice in there and make a theme and have lyrics, lyrics. So it's just but my love for this presentation has everything to do with the fact that you leverage your creativity. It was, here's the rules, but what can I do within that and expand upon it? And you're not limited to that. Now, if you want to invest a whole lot of time to make it, to that level of quality and have different versions of it, there's nothing stopping you from being able to do that. You have the ability to use your space for that whole hour to do whatever it is that you want. And so I want to give everyone an opportunity to kind of turn their cameras back on, and we'll have just a little bit of discussion. We have about 10 minutes here before the top of the hour. But one of the things that we all kind of envision, we're all part of the same team. There's actually a few other people that are on this team as well. But I kind of wanted to propose to everybody sort of what the vision is with this. And I'll start that what I'm envisioning with this is that you don't actually know what you're getting with a showcase until you get there. And that's the entire point, is that unlike a poster session where, I'm going to be seeing a lot of posters, we're taking that and flipping it on its side in 180 degrees. And we're saying, when you come to a showcase, you don't know what kind of presentation you're going to have. And each one of them is worth checking out because they're different. And they all are going to have a different flair to them, a different uniqueness, a different creativity. So just for all of you, what do you envision with a showcase, and how are you going to approach it? And John, if you want to go first.
Yeah, Trevor, excuse me. One of the things that I think especially came out with Pat's, presentation, really all these, is just the idea that I think, maybe for me historically, there was sort of like if I get the oral, that's like the highly sought after thing. If I get the poster, it's like, be a little more constrained or be a little more limited. But I think what's really exciting to me now is the fact that, I honestly think there's even some benefits to a showcase over an oral presentation, because your stuff's going to live for a lot longer, right? You can attach a PDF that's got all your extra slides. There's just a lot more interactivity, and it's going to live for the entirety of the session and be available for like months after the fact. So I'm really excited just about the added capability. I'm super pumped to see all the creative juices flow. Personally, I'm like, man, Pat, you keep doing your thing. I don't have the skill set or the focus or the attentiveness to be able to like create something that cool. But maybe like 5-10 years down the road, that's where we're getting, and there's a lot more like that. So I'm just excited for all that it's going to unlock, and even to see that, man, the showcase isn't quite as much, at least in my mind, of like a letdown compared to the oral presentation, because of all these different capabilities. So that's definitely what I'm pumped about.
Yeah, Jared, Pat, Melissa, this year, what are you looking forward to with this? Like, where do you see this going?
I'll jump in really quick. So if there's like any well-developed tools out there, I think this platform or this type of showcase really allows for like, okay, you've done the initial testing and you've done like all the, you're ready to almost kind of unveil it in some way, or you're like getting to that beta test and you want to showcase it more to other people. Then this is where you can really start to get some really good, genuine feedback in cases like this. I would agree with John that usually the orals are usually a little bit more sought after, at least in the past. And I think showcases in this format, in this way, can really further drive that or organic engagement that you can really get for like the people that are really interested in what you're doing or might be of like mind or of some sort. Then you can get a lot more miles in this type of format, I think, than sometimes even in an oral. Maybe someone will come and talk to you after the fact, and then you can connect that way. But this way, you can connect not only in person, if you're in person, but virtually, like John was saying, it lives a lot longer. And then that way, you can kind of get even greater collaboration further after, during, and after the meeting. So I'm really looking forward to that.
I couldn't agree more with you, Jared. Go ahead, Melissa.
Sorry, Trevor. I didn't mean to talk over you. I was just really excited. What I'm actually looking forward to is the way that I see this. This is almost like an introvert's dream of how they want to like build out what they want to present, and they can build it in a way that caters to how they want to present their work with not being forced to physically interact with people. And I know that sounds kind of odd, but there's so much more room for opportunity to be able to show your work and what you're doing as a professional in this field, without having to get up and talk on a stage in front of people, or even physically standing up in front of a poster and you're standing there and you're like, oh God, I really hope this person doesn't approach me because they want to talk to me about my poster. This gives you another avenue to be able to share the incredible work that you're doing, and also be able to have controlled interactivity between other people as well.
Yeah, I'll go a step further and say that in the past, I feel like conferences were designed to be lecturing outward, and this actually kind of really opens up the door for collaborating with our peers. So again, you had mentioned, if you get a sought after oral, but if you have an oral, then you'll have the limitations of time, the 10 minutes that you'll have, or 12 minutes or whatever you're getting. You'll also have usually format limitations, whether or not your AV can be done. It really kind of, it's much more rigid. And up until, when we had posters in the in-person realm posters, it was very rigid. And my first poster, I didn't even do anything really scientific. It was more of like outreach oriented. And I was like, a poster is not, I can't even think of how to put it on a poster. It needs to be more of a discussion. And so I feel like this really opens the door for whatever your work is, like whatever your science is, whatever work that you're working on is. Now you can think of the best way to actually present it versus a forced way to be able to present it, which I think is a key distinction. And that, I think, especially this year, now that we're kind of really doing that explicitly and encouraging that, that's going to be something where you really don't know what you're walking into. You should be seeing lots of people going, oh, I want to go to that. That looks cool. This is doing that. I want to go to this. And, and they, like they said, they live much longer on the app. But the experience of actually being at the conference is going to be more collaborative in that sense, rather than being lectured to or talked, at, if you will. So I'm really hoping that that's one of the things that we see from this as well. So I want to extend we're coming at the top of the hour here, so I want to extend my thank you to Jared, Melissa, Pat, John, and Brandon, who wasn't able to make it but showed his showcase for you. And I echo again that there's going to be more to come on this, not just as far as emails go, but as we mentioned, our team is now going to be looking forward to the experience at the annual meeting. We have a lot of ideas on how to actually do that, maybe even adopting some of the old poster mentality with that as well, and trying to figure out if there's a way that we can do that in the space in person. So that's the next challenge, but we're pretty optimistic because we have a lot of ideas with it. And then also that, like I had said before earlier on the webinar here, is that we'd like to be able to kind of kick off the generation of your presentations by helping. And one of the difficulties of opening up the doors for creativity is coming up with where should I start. And hopefully we'll have something in like the July timeframe, maybe late June, where we'll have a workshop, maybe 1 or 2 hours, where if you're not sure how to get started, there's several different people you can bounce an idea off of. What are you working on? What's the scope of it? Would you like co-authors? Would you like to do it this way? What's a good format that would be fun? And then if you had ideas and examples yourself, come share those as well. This is what I did. This is a resource that I used. And so you can be a trainer, if you will, and then share and crowdsource this information and these resources for other people. So, John, is there anything you wanted to mention before we adjourn?
One last thing is sort of a soft incentive, and this hasn't actually been approved yet, but I'm intrigued by the possibility, since we're calling these things showcases, that each year we'll have a showcase showdown where we have people go around and vote and figure out who's the best one, right? In true Price is Right fashion. So I'm thinking we can get the long microphone, we can get the yellow name badges and stuff, we can have the whole deal. So if you want to be the showcase showdown winner, start getting the creativity flowing and just have fun with this. But seriously, really excited to do this. Man, it's a great team. I'm honored to be a part of all these brilliant minds that have been coming up with some cool ideas. And as I mentioned earlier, do check out that overview and FAQ document. That's got a lot of the information there for you that you don't remember from today. And also, if you have suggestions, comments, questions, concerns, that annual meeting at nwas.org email will be a good one that will be checked throughout the summer. Please reach out to us, connect on social media, whatever you can to just get in touch with us, and we'll try to do what we can individually or get you to somebody that will be able to help you along the way.
Yep, absolutely. And again, this was a lot of content. If you weren't able to be on it, obviously you're on it now. But but we're going to have this recorded. We're going to be sharing this out. It's going to be on the YouTube page if you want to reference it again and look at any of the tools that we've discussed up to this point. But yeah, that'll be coming out very soon once we get this up on the platforms, and so you'll be there to consume it. Otherwise, on behalf of the webinar team and the NWA's ad hoc here on showcases, I want to say thank you for being here. And please reach out. I'm sure all of us would be willing to answer any questions in the interim, but please pay attention to your emails, as we'll have a lot more on this over the course of the summer leading up to the annual meeting. But thank you for being here today, and you all have a very good day, and we're looking forward to the annual meeting come August. See you all in Pittsburgh.